Hello, YouTube. Russian scientists have revealed the details of the Baikal expeditions that began in 2008. And yes, they were looking for aliens. Well, a few years ago, details of the expedition that took place in 2008 and a few years beyond that on the territory of the Lake Baikal. Well, the details became known. Some of the results were so incredible that scientists did not dare to publish them because they were afraid that they would be considered to be weirdos. But remember, it was an international expedition. Especially for this expedition, for this mission, military and special equipment were provided, including, of course, the Mir-1 and Mir-2 submersible vehicles on which President Putin was diving to the bottom of Lake Baikal. Let me say this now. 3 decades or more ago, I have begun investigating the mystery of the underwater humanoids sighted in Lake Baikal. My research, you can find in the playlist. There are numerous videos and the playlists about underwater humanoids and underwater mysteries. And you will find these playlists in the description of this video. So I will not repeat today the progress that was made. But I continuously monitor the news from that lake. And you can also find information about it in my book, Russia's USO Secrets, which I co-authored with Philip Mantle. The book is available in 7 languages, including Russian. But you see, I have published my investigative articles through the years, and they, in the Russian Federation, know about my work quite well, because my articles were consistently in English and, of course, Russian and a few other languages. But I want to reiterate, it was Colonel Steinberg, Soviet officer, veteran of the Afghan War, who had served in the armed forces of the USSR many years. Later, an American journalist, he emigrated to the United States, an historian, who passed away in 2019. He was the one that broke the story decades ago. And I was able to add the Demidенko information, which I already had, and more ever since. Again, you will find it in the videos and in my books. But let's get back to the expeditions. The official purpose of the expedition was to search for famous Kolchak gold. It was trumpeted by journalists. It wasn't the only official purpose of the expedition, but one of them. News agencies commented on every step that the scientists took, every dive. But many years later, the participants of those events admitted that they were looking for more than just lost gold. By the way, about this gold, look at the video. I'll also put in the link in the description. And it's a very interesting story, but I don't want to bring too much about it. There'll be enough. And it really shouldn't be called Kolchak's gold, but you will find out by looking at the other video. Alexei Tivanenko, a member of the expedition, began collecting eyewitness accounts of the Baikal anomalies sometime before the dive, of course. Well before. At first, he didn't take them seriously, but later he noticed patterns and similar stories. People talked about bright, fleeting flashes over the lake and at its bottom. There were also evidence of fantastic creatures living in it. Well, Tivanenko and I are not acquainted, and I'm happy to know that he came to similar conclusions that I did, but through his experience. Also, many years after the incident in 1982, Tivanenko said that he himself witnessed a fiery sphere flying over the Lake Baikal. 1982 was the date, was when the very painful encounter between the aliens, let's call them that, and the Soviet frogmen took place. You will find it in my other videos. Scientists have the opinion that aliens do not just visit the lake, At the deepest points, their bases could be located, which are skillfully camouflaged, and in cases of approaching terrestrial equipment, they use frightening technologies that cause interference. As a result, scientists could not find anything supernatural, at least according to the official account. I repeat, according to the official account. But the curious fact is that after the first dives, the government officials of the Russian Federation joined the scientists. They were even personally visited, the scientists, by the president of the Russian Federation, who issued orders. I'll get to that later, but it's very interesting. Putin is not a person who would take unnecessary risks. He knows how to stage his manly pursuits featured in Russian media, but this was quite dangerous. To take a dive like that in a bathscarf. In July 2008, the research expedition Worlds of Baikal arrived in the area of the village of Turka on the shore of Lake Baikal. The declared goals of the expedition included the following tasks: diving to the maximum bottom marks, updating data on tectonic processes at the bottom of Lake Baikal, exploring the outlet sites of underwater hydrothermal vents, studying lake hydrocarbons, and search for archaeological artifacts. These tasks were assigned to the most advanced deep-sea vehicles, Mir 1 and Mir 2, which, by the way, had never been immersed in fresh water before. Lake Baikal is a mysterious place, and I try to underscore this in my other videos about Lake Baikal. There are a sufficient number of places in the depths of the lake where scientists needed to take soil samples, explore underwater world and plants. Before we continue, let me present this very interesting view from Russia about the expedition. I find it fascinating, and I want to bring it now. It's not going to interfere with my further narrative, but listen to it. No one was looking for the Kolchak's gold there, and they were not even going to look for it. It was necessary to perform several tasks. One of them related to the problem of fresh water and its supplies to China. The second, scientific, to study the seabed. The third, it is known that not only the planet, the amount of fresh water on our planet is decreasing. And the main question is how much there can be enough for domestic consumption and import. And yet, some researchers were interested in the very objects that appeared before and appear from time to time in certain areas of the Great Lake Baikal. In one of these places, research, diving, and work were carried out. It was noticed during the expedition research, interference can be both natural and artificial. And they really were interfered with. Interesting. There is an interest in the USO, unidentified submersible object, and these things exist whether we want them to or not. Scientists who are used to material objects, their research are faced with an inexplicable phenomenon, dematerialization, more precisely the transition from non-material to material and vice versa. Of course, the military has also come close to these issues. The research results are there, and they continue to be worked on, trying to understand the structure, forms, process, and mechanism, the nature of this phenomena. Much is still not clear, but time is passing by. Postulates or established theories, dogmas are being revised, questions As a result, there is qualitative rethinking. Well, I completely agree with this view. And in my opinion, the person who published it is well versed on what really went behind the expeditions. But let me continue. First, we will hear from a seasoned explorer, also from those expeditions, who is very skeptical about one aspect of the investigation. 6 times the aquanaut Chernyaev went down to the bottom of Lake Baikal, looking for the Kolchak gold. It has long been known where the notorious Kolchak gold disappeared over 100 years ago. The place where it is now is also known, but restless treasure hunters do not believe this and continue to search. They're looking for it where trains with Russia's gold reserves passed, all over Siberia and at the bottom of Lake Baikal, but also along the Baikal Railway. And the legends that precious ingots were stolen and hidden are still passed from mouth to mouth. Yevgeny Chernyaev, commander of the deep-sea craft Mir and Mir-2, hero of Russia, came to Irkutsk and met with public figures back in 2021. One of the topics of discussion was the resumption of operations of the Mir-1 and Mir-2 deep-sea vehicles, the implementation of the project to return Mirs to work on Lake Baikal. The Irkutsk scientists that spoke to him were concerned about the intention of the Ministry of Science and Higher Education of the Russian Federation to remove the Mir craft from service and make museum exhibits out of them. If this happens, it will be impossible to restore them. And I just want to add, it will be very difficult, if not impossible now, to get to the bottom of Lake Baikal. So whoever wants to do continued research will not be able to do it unless it's done through the official government means. Thus, the initiative of Yevgeny Chernyaev, together with the Baikal Integration Foundation, is going to be able to save the Mir from conservation and at the same time bring their environmental monitoring of Lake Baikal to a qualitatively new level. Well, Russian journalist Andrei Korshunov caught up with Chernyaev and talked with him. They talked about different things because the famous sea diver saw the depths of the oceans, all the oceans of the world. He explored Lake Baikal and Bermuda and conducted countless unique underwater works. Chernyaev, in his experience, also discovered new species of animals and found treasures. So Yevgeny Chernyaev explored Lake Baikal for the second time in the span between 2008-2010 as the commander of the Mir-2 ship. In 3 years, submariners have made 178 dives there. Baikal is a unique lake because it is a small model of the world ocean. That's what Yevgeny Chernyaev told the Russian journalist. But if one interesting object in the ocean can be located tens of kilometers away from another object, then everything in Baikal is nearby. It is amazing that every time you dive, you find yourself in new unusual conditions with unusual geology, flora, or fauna. I shifted a little to the side, and again, something interesting is found. Therefore, it takes decades, not years, to truly explore Lake Baikal. That's what Chernyaev said. One of the tasks of the Mirs in Lake Baikal was to test the hypothesis about the presence of the so-called Kolchak gold in the lake. Chernyaev does not believe there is any gold at the bottom of the lake. Then why was he employed to command the ship? What was the purpose? Apparently, just to be in command of the craft. According to one hypothesis, during the Civil War, the Czechoslovak POWs, having captured train load with the Russian gold reserves during the deal with the Bolshevik communists in Irkutsk, they made a condition. They would take some of this gold with them. Further, following the Baikal railway, the Czechoslovak train crashed and the last two cars fell off the slope into the water. One of the local historical researchers claimed that it was in them that's where the gold bars were. See, one of the proponents of this hypothesis, historian from Buryatia, that's a republic within Russian Federation, Alexei Tivanenko, took part in the expedition of the Mir and made 6 dives with them in the place where the crash supposedly occurred. At the end of the expedition, the historian declared that Kolchak's treasures have been discovered. According to him, during the dives, heavy metal bars were found, which unfortunately could not be captured with a manipulator and raised to the surface. This, according to Tivanenko, was part of the Russian gold reserve that was captured by the Czechoslovaks. In the end, according to Cherняev, this account was not confirmed. We really found the remains of train cars, rails, trusses of the bridge that were blown up under the water. That's where they found them. Evgeny Cherняev reported to the Russian media of what he saw. But I have a lot of experience researching shipwrecks, and I know that when a sudden disaster occurs on the surface, there are many related items that were on this ship underwater. On Lake Baikal, apart from fragments of train cars and railway tracks, there were no other objects of that era. Consequently, the train cars were blown up. For example, maybe to distract attention, if the Czechoslovaks had gold with them, it was not left in Lake Baikal. Besides, Cherняev added, he has found gold before, and he knows what gold looks like underwater. Therefore, he can say with confidence that the metal bars that they found were not gold. Gold underwater has a greenish color and does not shine. And Tivanenko was guided by brilliancy or brightness underwater. Therefore, he saw treasure in every tin can, according to Cherняev. But now let's look at Tivanenko's information. And that's from year 2020. I have not seen anything very recent, but I keep monitoring, because Tivanenko is a very interesting source. The Buryat scientist, historian, and archaeologist Alexei Tivanenko claims that the famous Kolchak gold has long been found at the bottom of Lake Baikal. He saw it with his own eyes and even photographed gold bars with a royal stamp at a depth of 1.5 kilometers during a scientific deep-sea expedition to Lake Baikal in the summer of 2008. Alexei Tivanenko says that in 2008, when the expedition to Lake Baikal of the Mir-1 and Mir-2 deep-sea vehicles was organized, he, as a researcher of the Kolchak gold, was invited to take part in it because he worked at the Baikal Institute of Environmental Management and spent his whole life collecting information about Lake Baikal. But of course, he couldn't help but tell you what he learned about Kolchak gold. And so the Russian journalist, to make it short, asked him, can you show them the place? The scientist says that he could. He could show them the place where the gold is. And he says that in 1960s, he was actually in those places. The old-timers of the station who saw the train with their own eyes showed him the place where the train cars fell. The scientist remembers this place. Shortly after the disaster, the male residents of the station were herded there, forced to dive and get boxes out. People had to obey the military. What they couldn't get was left underwater, according to the author of the book, The Admiral's Golden Treasure. In his opinion, most of the gold lies at the bottom of Lake Baikal. Of the 17 train cars that departed from Irkutsk, only 6 cars arrived in Vladivostok. There is documentary evidence of this, including newsreel footage that Tivanenko saw. Consequently, the remaining 11 train cars, it turns out, lie at the bottom of Lake Baikal. In 2008, the first dive to the bottom of Lake Baikal took place, but nothing was found. However, in 2009, the wreckage of the Civil War era train was found. They were lying at the depth of 1.5 kilometers. It turns out that his calculations were wrong. When the train cars fell into the water, there was air in them for a while, plus the strong current of Lake Baikal. All this influenced the fact that the train cars were carried 500 meters away from the place where the fall occurred, and they were descending on the meres at the very foot of the cliff. In fact, the wreckage of the train was a little further away. They saw the train cars, the wreckage. A lot of it was covered with sand. The remnants of the train fell apart all over the slope. Parts of the train, boxes of ammunition, and twisted rails were also found a kilometer from the crash site, recalled Alexei Tivanenko. So there, among the wreckage of the Tsar's train, the expedition members saw with their own eyes the same royal, or should I say imperial gold. They saw the royal gold Tivanenko saw the royal gold with his own eyes. In one place, under a stone, there is a real ingot. It can be seen, that gold. They had to make sure that it really was what it was. But the ingots were under the stones, and the mechanical arms of the device are only 1.5 meters long. There are iron train car farms around. They couldn't get through. The researchers couldn't get through to the gold. So they began to disassemble the stones, but realized that it was useless. If the device had been standing on an even place of the bottom, they would have been able to sort out the rubble. But they couldn't. They tried, but did not succeed, according to the scientists. Then it was decided to at least blow away the sand in order to take a good look at the discovered treasure. They turned the device on, they twisted the rear screw, and the sand was blown away. And it really became clear that there was an ingot of gold lying there. The brands are visible, everything matches. They photographed everything. It is clearly visible in the pictures, assures Russian researcher. In total, when diving in the bathyscaphs, 2 ingots weighing 16 kilograms each were found in the rubble. They were photographed, but it is not yet possible to get them out of the rubble due to technical complexity. They have reported the discovery to the Kremlin. In 2010, chairman of the Russian Federation Council, Sergei Mironov, visited Buryatia. He also went down to the bottom, made sure that the gold was there. And then the finance minister Kudrin came down too. Now, as for Vladimir Putin, let me look at my other notes. In August 2009, the current president Vladimir Putin, then prime minister at the time of the country, descended to the bottom of the lake on the Mir 1 apparatus. He communicated at the moment when the bathyscaph, that craft, was at the deepest point in the southern part of Lake Baikal, 1,395 meters. There is a wonderful view outside the porthole. The bottom is visible. It is very clean and beautiful, Putin said over the hydrophone. So that's about Putin. Apparently, Putin asked Tivanenko, or others too, how much gold is there in your opinion? And Tivanenko replied, who knows? The fact is that out of 17 train cars that departed from Irkutsk, again, only 6 arrived in Vladivostok. So we already know where the remaining 11 ones are. However, even today, over 10 years after the discovery, the gold remains at the bottom of Lake Baikal because Russia doesn't yet have the technical ability to lift them up. The depth is 1.5 kilometers. but Russia's most modern equipment cannot lift the valuable cargo, freeing it from under the heavy debris. But then Putin ordered, think, create devices to sort out the rubble, and carefully study this question, exactly how much gold lies at the bottom of Lake Baikal. Maybe the goal is not worth the effort. That's what they were trying to determine, and that's what Ivanenko said. Well, Alexei Vasilyevich, he was asked, to be honest, do you believe the possibility of getting gold bars from the bottom of Lake Baikal? Or do recent events no longer provide this hope? That's what he was asked. And Ivanenko added, I consider this to be my life's work. Now there is one way to find out if there is gold at the bottom of Lake Baikal or if it's not there. There are sensors that detect the presence of precious metals at the depth. I suggest cutting holes, lowering these devices there, and identifying at least those places where there is an accumulation of metal in the waters of Lake Baikal. But my proposals remained unanswered, both at the highest level and from the local authorities. That's interesting, because I don't think that the highest level and the local authorities who listens to the highest level want to see further independent or semi-independent civilian research of Lake Baikal's bottom. This is my opinion. By the way, the director of the Fund for the Promotion of the Preservation of Lake Baikal, Bair Tserenov, who was diving in Mir-2 as part of the expedition, suddenly declared after surfacing, they found shiny bars of yellow color, regular shape, similar to ingots at the bottom of Lake Baikal. They will be able to tell what it is only when the decoding of the video recording is done. It was impossible to reach these objects with a manipulator. They've been poking around for a very long time, several hours. The bars were wedged between the stones. So I think that's as much as I should tell you about the gold, one of the purposes of the expedition. Very good subterfuge to use to study the bottom, to go to the bottom of Lake Baikal in a semi-civilian expedition, so to say. But now let's talk about the underwater humanoids. Alexei Ivanenko believes that the divers could really see something. And I'm talking about 1982 incident. And these were not seal carcasses. In his article, Traces of Real Extraterrestrial Life in Lake Baikal, he points out that local fishermen took various fables about silver swimmers seriously. And you will understand what I should say about the silver-clad or swimmers clad in silver suits refers to the humanoids of 1982. For example, fisherman Nikolai Kireev from the village of Kultuk, 40 kilometers from Sludyanka, told a local historian that in the 1990s he once fished with his comrades at the Baikal Railway, which stretches from the Kultuk to the port of Baikal. Lake Baikal in this place breaks off to a depth of almost 1,400 meters immediately, are abruptly near the shore. If one falls overboard there, they will die. Even in summer, the water temperature in such places is no higher than 3 degrees. If the person doesn't swim to the shore, his or her heart will stop. And in the middle of the night, huge silvery bodies began to jump out of the icy depths of the lake, as if they were playing. The fishermen were scared. No matter how these creatures turned, they were afraid that the creatures would turn their motorboat over. After throwing the nets and somehow starting the engine, The fishermen retreated to the village and never fished at the Krugla Baikalka again. However, from the shore, Kireev showed Tivanenko the place where it happened. Other fishermen who were with Kireev also told the local historian about this case. But of all the witnesses, only Kireev remained alive at the time of the interview. The rest somehow quickly died. How interesting. In my book, I have an episode about a lake in Kamchatka and what happened to the fishermen who observed the takeoff of the UFO from that lake. It is known that the researchers who studied Lake Baikal in the 2008-2009 on the Mir Deep Sea vehicles took Tivanenko's story seriously. Tivanenko was on the expedition too and went down to the Lake Baikal himself. According to him, it happened in the place where the military divers collided with these swimmers. However, the encounter did not happen that time when the Russian scientists submerged during the expedition. According to Tivanenko, the specialist of the Ministry of Emergency Situations of Russia, with whom he had talked, not only took the fisherman's story seriously, but also confirmed that the tragedy in 1982 really happened. And Tivanenko remembered that in that distant year, he himself encountered the military on Lake Baikal in the Barguzin Bay. When asked what they were doing there, the soldiers answered evasively. They said that they are studying the depths of the reservoir because limnologists do not know everything about its underwater life. The words of the local historian are indirectly confirmed by the author of the book Sailors on Lake Baikal, Alexander Kalatilo, who speaks of an extraordinary surge of interest in Lake Baikal since the 1960s. Then geographers and cartographers appeared on the shores of the lake again, and research vessels began to surf the waters of the lake. The local historian admits that there are many strange phenomena on Lake Baikal. There is a glow from the depths, and there are blood-curdling sounds and wandering lights over the water that can be seen if you pass a couple of nights by the campfire on the shore. Tivanenko himself observed a UFO over the lake 3 times. Once from the window of his own cottage at the Boyarsk station. It was a huge white sphere on the surface of the lake. It did not move or drift and it did not look like a gas release. The second time it happened, it was on a warm summer evening in Tanhoy. Something small and black fell from the sky at high speed. It was supposed to fall into the lake, but before reaching the surface of the water a few meters, it abruptly changed its trajectory and flew over Lake Baikal. The local historian and his companions, about 10 people, expected that the object would now crash into fishing boats, but it suddenly disappeared as if it had never existed. And walking along the Circum-Baikal Railway, Tivanenko once observed a cigar-shaped object of silver-orange color that flew out from the Tunka Valley, flew over the surface of Lake Baikal, and retired to the Khamar Daban Ridge. The local historian defined its dimensions as 200 meters long and about 50 meters wide. Over Lake Baikal, a UFO released 3 spherical objects that flew apart. Later, Tivanenko learned that the same object had been seen over Ulan-Ude. In the old archives, the local historian found 2 amazing documents. First, he discovered that a similar object appeared over Lake Baikal in 1909. It was seen on the Trans-Baikal Railway. The object was moving towards Lake Baikal. And regarding the swimmers, those underwater humanoids, Tivanenko found a story from 100 years ago by a Tobolsk peasant Kuzma Marokov, who reported that his comrade was a local from Baikal area, Fetche Tarazan, told him that there are so-called pharaohs on Lake Baikal. One day these pharaohs got so excited that they sank the ship or the boat. Then the villagers guessed and throwing a strong net into the lake Baikal, they pulled out about 50 pharaohs ashore. The pharaohs were just like people. They had arms, legs, all human. Only where the paws are, they have grown together there, and the tail of a fish. The villagers whipped the pharaohs with rods and threw them into the sea, back into the sea. And after this incident, the pharaohs went to another place. To believe or not to believe, everyone decides for himself. On the one hand, Ivanenko is considered to be, somebody who has visions, but on the other hand, a person who has enough regalia on him to take him seriously. He has done quite a lot of discoveries. He is one of the founders of the Ethnographic Museum of the Peoples of Transbaikalia. He worked as the director of the State Archive of the Burat, Autonomous Soviet Socialist Republic. He was a member of the Academic Council of Archivists of Siberia and the Far East, senior researcher at the Baikal Institute of the Environmental Management, candidate of historical sciences, doctoral student. He discovered graves of members of the Russian embassy mission Yerofey Zabolotsky, who was killed on the Lake Baikal by the Mongols in 1650. He found the relics of the local Russian Christian Orthodox saint Varlam Chikoisky. He discovered the forgotten grave of the Hungarian poet Sándor Petőfi in Barguzin, and found many other equally interesting objects, ancient sanctuaries, fortresses, and settlements. Quite a reliable source, to put it simply. Alexei Vasilievich Ivanenko was born in 1947, and he is the Baikal's local historian and scientist. And he was born in Siberia, a journalist, writer, local historian, archaeologist, employee of the Russian Academy of Sciences, author of 66 books and several thousand local history articles, most of which are devoted to Lake Baikal and Transbaikalia. He began to engage in local history in the town of Sludyanka on the southern coast of Lake Baikal, where he created school, a Kultuk village, and a regional museum. He led a local history club, and from there he made paleontological trips to Transbaikal area, Mongolia, Khakassia, and Tuva, as part of the expedition of the Institute of the Earth's Crust of the USSR Academy of Sciences, and he made quite a few interesting archaeological discoveries. Specialist in the study of ancient rock art, cult complexes of the tribes of Eastern Siberia, from the Paleolithic to the Middle Ages, early forms of religion, shamanism, and he deciphered the rock pictographs, comparing them with the pattern base of ancient Chinese hieroglyphs. I want to add something else about the expeditions. Over the course of 3 years, Mears made 178 dives. According to the media estimates, the expedition cost more than $6 million. It became possible, this expedition, thanks to the Fund for the Promotion of the Preservation of Lake Baikal. The chairman of the board of trustees of this scientific and educational center, established in 2008, is Mikhail Slipinchuk, a former State Duma Parliament deputy from Buryatia, owner of the Metropole Group of companies. By the way, he himself said that the idea to explore the lake with the help of the deep sea vehicles and thus draw the attention of the authorities and the world community to its problems came to him during the expedition to the North Pole, Arctic 2007. And we succeeded, said Slipinchuk. Many politicians, cultural figures, scientific and environmental organizations expressed a desire to participate in the expedition. There were Russian musicians too, and Russian writers during the seasons of the expeditions, and foreigners too. For example, James Cameron. By the way, some footage of the film Titanic by James Cameron was filmed by cameras mounted on this very bathyscaphs, these very submersible vehicles, the MERS. And the American director himself celebrated his 56th birthday in 2010 by diving into the Baikal depths. Very interesting how this expedition was used, in my opinion, to collect information about the most important subject, I think, that would interest the Russian government, and not only the Russian government, is the presence of the aliens in Lake Baikal. By the way, there is an official hypothesis of the origin of Lake Baikal, according to which this lake is the result of tectonic processes and is the deepest on Earth. However, recent studies have revealed unusual structures that previously could not be studied by other methods. The southern part of the lake turned out to be especially interesting, where the bottom of the depression descends gently along the eastern shores and very steeply along the western ones. These discoveries confirm the assumption that the slopes of the depressions have an unnatural character and resemble quarries. Do you understand? This is a very unusual place, Lake Baikal. We just don't know enough, because Baikal has many secrets, but we'll keep looking. This is what I wanted to let you know today. And I'll continue my research, and if you like my research, and if you want to support me, or if you can, please do so through the links you will find in the description to this video. Please tell others about my work. Please like my videos, and thank you for your attention to my work.